It's gonna be a chill day today because one is raining outside, two is that I won't be flying for a while. My goggles is somewhere on the way back to China going to get a warranty claim. Yes, I have finally decided to send my goggles back to DJI for the warranty claim because as you've seen from some episodes, there's this yellow dots in the middle of my screen. I don't know how that came about. Maybe it was due to sun exposure, likely. Yup, they have allowed me for a warranty claim on that. It's gonna down me for the next like 6 weeks or somewhere around there, but it's okay because I already have some content that I have planned along the way, which not necessarily I need to be filming out on the field. Just stay tuned for that. Anyways, if you're new to the channel, there'll be more DJI FPV content, so do subscribe and follow me through this journey. So right now, let's do a Q&A session, right, where I answer some of your questions. Let's start with this one. When I mount the Gopro 9 onto the DJI FPV drone with the new firmware, and when I hover the drone, it is really shaking, and even when cruising. Okay, so I'm gonna answer this. During the new firmware update, right, I felt that there was some stability improvement in the form of the PID tuning. Of course, that is not something that we can assess, but know that it has improved how it controls itself in flight. Now here's the thing. That tune-up has nothing to do with mounting a GoPro on top. Okay, so DJI assumes that you'll be flying the drone as is, and now that you've mounted something else on top, it may not know how to deal with that additional weight. What I can recommend you is that this is gonna be a bit of trial and error. Find a good midway point that you can hover and also fly with the Actioncam by tilting it backwards to find a good center balance point, or you may even need to change your mount to find a better balance point. Like for me, with this Actioncam, I don't really hover in place with this, but on tests, I do make sure that it doesn't have much of a fight. So it looks weird leaning backwards like this, but at least when during flight, a forward flight anyways, the cam will be a bit more well balanced in the center. Okay, so yeah, that's just my practical way of going around the imbalance of the drone. Rahim, how can I place the flight data in my edits? Okay, so now you can actually switch on captions, where the OSD data on whatever you see in your goggles will be reflected in as captions. I won't go too much into that, there'll be a future episode, stay tuned. Okay, here's a common one. Rahim, what are your rates? One is I'm gonna show you the rates right here. Two is I'll put a link in the description where you can watch a full episode on how I got about getting these rates. And if you want to learn how to also tune up your own rates, here's a episode right up here. Okay, is your autofocus mode on or off? Right now I'm experimenting with that. Autofocus mode is basically where your image, your video image is gonna lose focus at the sides of the whole frame. Reason for this is so that it maintains highest bitrate in the center portion. Especially useful for me, that I find, like especially when I'm doing some risk maneuvers, doing some acrobatic flights, or going around dense trees or whatsoever. If the bitrate drops, at least it maintains clarity in the center of the frame, because I don't really need to see the side and just focus on the center portion. So I think it's useful, but I haven't really fully tested going on and off that. I mean, now if I were to think of it, like when would I actually not use autofocus mode? I think the conditions could be like if I were just taking cinematic cruising shots and I really needed to have the DVR as a secondary reserve shot, then that will be the condition lah. But for, let's say I'm doing acrobatic shots, I have a additional cam on top of my DJI FPV, then maybe the DVR footage would not be as critical. So yeah, that will be one of the conditions that I would think of how you should choose the autofocus mode. Okay, this is gonna be Singapore specific. I'm a bit confused about where drones can be flown in Singapore. So I usually take two steps. The first step is you're gonna go to download the One Map app, and within that there's a drone enquiry. From there, you will then be able to see the no-fly zones within Singapore. It will not be wrong for you to assume that the other areas are flyable, but then if you're flying in a park, then do also check the second step, NParks website. NParks would have stated where which parks are not allowed. Now, even if it's a fly zone, do follow CAAS Guidelines. I'll put a link in the description. On the flight with the DJI FPV, the tips of the propellers appear. How do you get them out of the footage? This is going to be an easy one. All you need to do is actually on the distortion correction, and it will immediately crop in the image, correct any form of distortion, any bending of the image, and definitely your props will be out of the picture. But here's the thing, why do I have them in the footage itself is because I kind of want to give it a more organic feel, especially when I'm training, I'm doing some practice runs. I want to see my props in the picture. That will also mean I won't have any image stabilization included. So without stabilization, it tells me whether I'm flying smooth or I'm all over the place. So I guess it will be a choice to be made. If you're not going for any cinematic shots and it's just a practice run, I suggest you switch off all the stabilization, distortion, correction and all that. Leave the footage as it is. This will definitely give you more feedback on whether your flying style is smooth or it needs improvement. How hot do my motors get? This is really I guess some pain tolerance got to do with this. Go and give the motors a quick grab, alright? Just touch and go, just to feel whether they are warm. I guess warm to slightly hot is okay, but if you know you cannot even hold your grip for even 1 second because it's piping hot, then I guess there is something that is not right with your setup. Could be because of its imbalance due to mounting an additional item on top, or props are really worn out. When I say really worn out, it's like really janky props. It's like jagged and bent up. So then just get your props changed. You should solve that. But if you are flying normally and there's the unit has been consistent and suddenly now you're having hot motors, I think something is wrong there. Maybe you could need to bring back to DJI to have a look. I repeat again, when I mean hot, it's piping hot. You can't even hold your grip onto the motors. Okay, so if it's warm to slightly hot, it's fine, because it depends on flying style, flying conditions, and sometimes if the day is too windy and the motors are always fighting to keep the drone stable, that could also cause the motors to be hot. So don't worry too much into that. Just check on them once in a while. Don't need to be alarmed. Just carry on flying. What is Propwash? Okay, this is where there is a rapid fluttering of the drone itself. Now, if you were to consistently fly smooth, like I've told you before, I aim to always fly smooth. So that also means that I don't, besides cruising smoothly, I also don't make sudden direction changes, right? This would definitely cause Propwash to appear. Now, what is Propwash in itself is that when the drone has a sudden change of direction and it has to fight to counter that change in dynamics, this is where it will flutter. Alright, the drone literally will dance in a rapid flutter, and that is so-called Propwash. There's more science got to do with it, but I'm no expert. So this is the least that I can explain it to you. Thing to note here is that there is no way for us to tune out Propwash. When I say us, it's because it's got to do with PID tuning, and that's only accessible to DJI. So even if we change our rates, it's not going to change Propwash. What I can tell you is that just fly smooth. Don't make sudden directional changes, and if you're gonna be doing a dive or certain maneuvers may require that you get back on the throttle sooner so that you will avoid having this Propwash. One example, if you're doing loops, especially when you're doing loops, if you're gonna be diving and want to pick up the pace this way, you better be on the throttle faster. If not, this sudden direction change without throttle, it's gonna cause the drone to flutter as it's fighting gravity. Okay, so yeah, that's one tip. Rahim, did you have motion sickness when you first started out? Yes, I did have. Of course, it didn't last too long for me. At the first few flights, I wasn't really like fancy acro flying anyways, so it was a lot of cruise, but I did feel a bit dizzy after flying for long periods of time. So how do I counter this is that I actually spend more time on the sim. Small gradual intervals. Maybe take it at 1 minute, then became 2, then became 5 minutes on the sim. Eventually you'll get comfortable enough. Your eyes, your whole thing going on here will get used. to the FPV flight, but know that some of us will never get used to it. Like for myself, example, if I'm wearing goggles and I may like get flying confident straight up and just fly the drone, if I have certain maneuvers that cause me to be alarmed, like I have to avoid a crash suddenly, the physical body will actually twitch also, and that's quite unavoidable. I think it's just a mental wiring kind of thing that you just can't undo. So it's all good. Motion sickness is just one of the things that many pilots actually go through at the start state. Don't bother to deal with it up in the sky. Get yourself in the sim, a bit at a time, and you'll get better at it. Okay, that's gonna wrap it up for this episode. I do have more questions that I want to be answered, but let's leave those questions for a future Q&A. I hope the answers have helped you one way or another to hopefully become a better pilot. If you've liked this video, do give it a thumbs up. Subscribe if you're not already. Do chat with me in the comment section. And pilots, as always, I'll see you in the skies. Peace!